Last night, at a private fundraiser in Connecticut, and for the first time since Donald Trump was found guilty of 34 felonies, President Biden confronted Trump's legal status head on. Here's the quote. "For the first time in American history, a former president is a convicted felon." Now he's running again. He's not only obsessed with losing in 2020, he's clearly been, and I mean this sincerely, a little unhinged. Now, so far, President Biden has only said the F word, felon, in private. But early post-conviction polls may change that strategy. The majority of Americans believe that the jury in Trump's case made the right call. According to a new Reuters Ipsos poll, 54% of independent voters say Trump's prosecution upheld the rule of law. And 10% of Republican registered voters say they are less likely to vote for Donald Trump following his conviction. I'm back with former U.S. Senator Claire McCaskill. I'm also joined by Jonathan Martin, senior political columnist at Politico. Thank you for being here. J. Martin, let me just first ask you what you see or what you understand to be this sort of trepidation inside the Biden campaign around having the president more aggressively call out Trump's convicted felon status and just go after him on his legal travails.
I think it's two things, Alex. I think it's number one, not wanting to play into the Republican hands of the idea that this was a political hit job that was planned in the West Wing and DOJ. And obviously, if Biden was to go at this head on, you'd certainly hear more of that kind of language from the Republicans. I think the other issue is Joe Biden himself. Look, as Senator McCaskill knows, Biden's a thoroughgoing institutionalist. He doesn't like the idea of sort of using that sort of an attack against his opponent, of, weaponizing his opponent's, legal exposure. That's not a natural thing for Joe Biden. And I think at every step of this campaign, Biden has had to be pushed a little bit to go harder and harder at Trump. For a while, he wouldn't even say Trump's name. I'm really curious if Biden makes that same attack he did last night that you showed there from the fundraiser on camera at a rally, because obviously it's a very different thing when you're saying that, at a donor event, Alex, than on camera.
Yeah, Claire, what is your expectation on that front? I mean, there's a debate in a couple weeks, and are we going to hear any of this?
Yeah, everybody knows he was convicted of felon. I mean, they know. I mean, it's not like anybody in America doesn't know that Donald Trump was convicted. And I don't think Biden needs to be the one to emphasizing over and over again. What he does need to do is stand up for those jurors. He needs to stand up for the institution. He needs to stand up for the institutions of America that have made our country so wonderful. And that's what Trump is campaigning against. Mm-hmm. He's actually campaigning against the essence of our system. And that's what he needs to do at the debate. He needs to go after Trump in a way that is really strong, just like he did in the State of the Union. I mean, this guy, it's about strength and about the strength of America and about Donald Trump thinking that we suck. And that's what he needs to be doing.
But do you think that sort of ideological or at least theoretical argument about the sanctity of democracy and democratic institutions resonates more with the 10 people who are going to decide the election, as opposed to, do you really want a convicted felon running the country?
I do think it does, because I think that people are tired of the chaos. I think they're tired of the drama. I think Joe Biden got to be president in the first place because people wanted a nice guy who believed in America and who wanted to lift us up, not grind us down. I mean, Donald Trump wants everybody to be grievance and mad and everything's rigged and Joe Biden wants people to believe in the promise of this country. It's a pretty stark contrast, and if he does it with strength, I think he will have more effect on those independent voters than just harping on the convicted felon thing, because everybody knows it.
J. Mart, your colleague Reed Epstein from your alma mater at the New York Times was saying on the Daily podcast that the more Trump is talking about the conviction and railing his supporters against Joe Biden and the DOJ, the less he's talking about inflation and immigration, the better it is for Joe Biden. I mean, Biden announced a very, very big executive order on immigration today. I wonder, sort of what you make of the headline, to restrict migrants, Biden leans on Trump's favorite immigration law. What do you make of the political calculation there?
that Biden needs to address the border because it seems chaotic and it's done real damage to his political standing for the last 2.5 years. It's pretty straightforward. He would have loved to have signed any bill that had come out of the Congress earlier this year. Obviously, Trump stymied that effort. So he had no choice, I think, politically, but to turn to do this kind of an order. And it's something that I think, Alex, that he could hold up at the debate, hold up on the campaign trail when he's, attacked on this. Says, I have taken a hard line on the issue. The question is, was it too late doing this? Look, I think the shorthand on this election is pretty straightforward. If in October this is about Donald Trump, Joe Biden's got a good shot to win. If in October this is about Joe Biden, I think that Donald Trump is probably going to win. It's hard to recall a modern campaign where the two major party nominees really, really wanted the conversation to be about the other guy instead of them.